for the ice to melt so you can go swimming? Think again, especially if you live in Canada. Canada has more cryptids than Transylvania. Here are a few that lurk just beneath the waves. Kraken / giant squid. The Kraken was long considered a mythical creature, a giant octopus which used its tentacles to seize sailors from the decks of ships. Sometimes it would even wrap several of its several arms around the mainmast and haul the ship down to Davy Jones's locker. Imagine the shock when it was learned that the Kraken was real, that it was the giant squid. During the mid-1800s, the remains of giant squids began washing up on the rocky beaches of Newfoundland, and on October the 26th, 1873, Theophile Picot, his 10-year-old son, and another man, Daniel Squires, had a close encounter in Portugal Cove, Conception Bay. The fishermen found a squid floating on the water, but when they struck it with a hook, it attacked their boat with a pair of tentacles, attempting to drag it underwater. Picot's son cut off both arms with an axe. That's the arms of the squid, not his arms. Who wrote this crap anyways? Oh yeah, I did. Rise above. Picot's son cut off both arms with an axe, causing the squid to back off, fouling the water with jets of black ink. One arm was used for dog food, but the other was turned over to science. With a length of 19 feet, it indicated the squid was a monster around 40 feet long. On September the 22nd, 1877, another squid, measuring over 40 feet in length, was to wash up at Catalina, Trinity Bay, Newfoundland. What follows is a bad poem about the Kraken / giant squid by the bad poet Warren S. James. Off Newfoundland's quite rocky coast, there dwells an underwater ghost, and if you saw it, you'd be shaken at this thing they call the Kraken. But the Kraken is a real beast, a great big mollusk from down east. I wouldn't kid you, honest kid. The Kraken is the giant squid. Warren here. At the time I wrote this poem, I thought the name of the cryptid was pronounced Kraken. It wasn't until Seattle got its National Hockey League team, the Seattle Kraken, that I realized I had mispronounced the name. So I guess I'm going to have to rewrite this poem someday. But for right now, how about, now don't you try to pet the Kraken, or on you, it will be snacking. Goo goo. Yeah, you heard that right. Goo goo. G-O-U, G-O-U. The goo goo is one of two monsters reported by the famous early Canadian Samuel de Champlain, the other being Champ, the lake monster of Lake Champlain. A giant, hideous, and cannibalistic woman, Goo Goo haunts the waters of New Brunswick's Chaleur Bay. It attacks ships by wading up to them. Goo Goo towers as high as the mainmast by wading up to them and plucking unwary sailors off the decks. Those seamen not immediately consumed are put in her pockets to snack on later. The pockets were said to be so large the Goo Goo could place an entire sailing ship inside one of them. What follows is a bad poem about the Goo Goo. The waters of the Baie Chaleur are known for their strange allure. It is the home of the Goo Goo, a giantess who will eat you. She is too ugly, is too tall. In fact, she is a cannibal. She has an awful appetite. So don't you be her snack tonight. The Lake Utopia Monster. Lake Utopia in southern New Brunswick is a home of a voracious monster which has been described as both a serpent and a fish. Reported to be 100 feet long, it lives at the bottom of this small lake, but is usually observed when basking at full length upon the surface of the water. Witnesses sometimes describe it as looking like a huge floating log. On other occasions, the monster makes itself known by churning up the lake bed, causing all sorts of flotsam and jetsam to surface in a boiling, bubbling geyser. A witness who saw the monster in July 1982 said it looked like a submarine coming out of the water with spray on both sides. It was about 10 feet long and put me in mind of the back of a whale. A frightening close encounter took place in the late 1800s when two men in a canoe were chased by the monster, which attempted to bite them with a mouth full of sharp, wicked-looking teeth. The monster is sometimes referred to as Old Ned. What follows is a bad poem about the Lake Utopia monster. Here we find a Fortean critter who will eat you like a fritter. It lives down below the water, but will surface for your slaughter. You know it has a taste for blood. You wish it would stay in the mud. For there really is no hopia for those trapped out on Lake Utopia. The Thetis Lake Monster. The Thetis Lake Monster is Canada's very own creature from the Black Lagoon. In fact, they could be twins. Thetis Lake is found just outside of Victoria, British Columbia. They took a trip to Thetis Lake. Turned out to be a big mistake. Yes, they were planning on a swim, but ended up not going in. They saw a humanoid with gills, a scaly skin and other frills. What was the worst thing that they saw? The creature waving its right claw. Bye-bye. But what about the remains of strange sea creatures which sometimes wash up on the beach? Those aquatic corpses known as globsters. On the beach there is a globster, partly snake and partly lobster. We don't know just what to think. We're only sure it's gonna stink. No, it ain't gonna smell like roses as it slowly decomposes. We don't know just what we've got. We only know it's gonna rot. Well, this seems like a good place to stop. The moral of the story? Good poetry is hard to write, but anyone can write a poem that stinks. If this is your first visit to my channel, please consider subscribing. My name is Warren, and I write and tell original ghost stories and original horror stories featuring such cryptids as the Night Floaters, werewolves, and the Black-Eyed Children. So again, please consider subscribing. Please help me to reach my goal of 2,022 subs in 2022. And I'm so close now. So close. So why not just subscribe? Don't wait for a rainy day. Caddy. Caddy. Short for Cadborosaurus. Caddy, with a D, is a resident of Cadboro Bay, near Victoria on Vancouver Island, where its likeness may be seen. The name Cadborosaurus, which combines Cadboro, for Cadboro Bay, and saurus, as in dinosaur, was coined by journalist Richard L. Pocock. Richard L. Pocock of the Victoria Daily Colonist newspaper, although Caddy is usually associated with journalist Archie Wills of the Victoria Daily Times. A June 15, 1950, Maclean's magazine article by Ray Gardner, there's a link to it in the description, added the regal title King of the Coast. At the time of Gardner's article, Caddy had been seen by 500 witnesses who had estimated its length from between 35 to 110 feet. Gardner also described Caddy's head as being like that of a camel. Among the witnesses was novelist Hubert Evans, 1892 to 1986, who saw Caddy in the Strait of Georgia off Roberts Creek in 1932. Evans, who saw the beast in profile, described its head as very much like a horse's in general shape, with eye bumps, nostrils, and something in the way of ears or horns. Another witness of the incident thought the creature had a mane on the back of its neck. In 1937, the remains of an unknown maritime creature, supposedly an infant Cadborosaurus, was found in the stomach of a sperm whale at Naden Harbor Whaling Station. The unknown was over 10 feet long, with a head like a large dog, with features of a horse and the turned-down nose of a camel. A sample of the carcass was sent to the BC Provincial Museum, where director Francis Kermode identified it as the remains of a fetal baleen whale. According to Wikipedia, Caddy has been identified as a plesiosaur, conger eel, humpback whale, elephant seal, sea lion, ribbon or oarfish, basking shark, pipefish, and, of course, a sturgeon. One intriguing idea is that Caddy is a prehistoric snake-like whale called a Zeuglodon. A Zeuglodon. Zeuglodon. And to translate for American listeners, Zeuglodon. A Zeuglodon. A Zeuglodon or Basilosaurus. Basilosaurus, a predatory sea creature which roamed the seas during the late Eocene period, some 41.3 to 33.9 million years ago. The Basilosaurus was a marine mammal, in spite of being labeled a saurus, which means lizard, as in dinosaurs. They ranged in size from 49 to 66 feet in length. And what do I think Caddy is? Dunno. But do I think Caddy really exists? I do. When I visited Cadboro Bay back in the 90s, Dr. Curious rode on its back, and I have a link to a picture of the Caddy she rode in the description. What follows is a bad poem about Caddy the Cadborosaurus by the bad poet Warren S. James. Here's to Caddy, raise a toast. Caddy is king of the coast. His home is in Cadboro Bay. Bug him and he'll swim away. But Caddy is just too darn long, unless the witnesses are wrong. So, let's hear a rousing chorus. 3 cheers for Cadborosaurus. So, are you guys going to cheer with me? You're going to have to, otherwise this is going to sound really lame. Hip hip hooray. Okay, let's go all together now. Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Yeah, that was still pretty lame, but better than me alone. Ogopogo. Ogopogo is one of the most famous monsters in the world. It is said to inhabit a cave at Squally Point in Okanagan Lake, a large 69-mile-long glacial lake in British Columbia's Okanagan Valley. The local First Nations population sacrificed animals to the creatures of the lake, and when Europeans began to settle the area in the 1860s, they also saw it. Ogopogo was named at a Rotary Club luncheon in nearby Vernon, British Columbia, on August the 23rd, 1926, when a member named Bill Brimblecombe sang the following parody. I'm looking for the Ogopogo, the bunny-hugging Ogopogo. His mother was a mutton, his father was a whale. I'm going to put a little bit of salt on his tail. I'm looking for the Ogopogo. I hope he had a ukulele. The words to the song were written by an amateur actor named H.F. Beatty. Bunny hugging refers to a popular dance of the Roaring Twenties, while the entire name makes one think of a pogo stick, another invention of the 20s. As the infamous Loch Ness Monster did not receive its nickname, Nessie, until 1933, Ogopogo can claim that it is truly numero uno in the Goblin universe. Ogopogo has been photographed and filmed on a number of occasions, although the experts are divided as to the veracity of the evidence. Perhaps the best film was taken in 1968 by Art Folden, a mill worker from Chase, BC, who took Super 8 footage of an aquatic critter estimated to be 60 to 70 feet long. What follows is a bad poem about Ogopogo by the bad poet Warren S. James. Ogopogo has the claim a pop song gave it its name before Nessie in Loch Ness, much to her shame and distress. So Ogopogo's really glam, with the hard head of a ram, the body's long, the tail's thick, like an Ogopogo stick. Manipogo. First Nations tradition has long held that Lake Manitoba is the home of a great snake. On August the 12th, 1960, 17 witnesses watched the huge serpent swimming off the beach near a place called Toutesaides. No way I was going to try to pronounce that. One of those watching, a land inspector named Tom Locke, tried to shoot it with a movie camera, but he was out of film. He did, however, dub the strange creature Manipogo, an amalgam of Manitoba and Ogopogo, the famous denizen of Lake Okanagan. The beach where the sighting took place was also renamed Manipogo Beach. A radio personality from Pembina, North Dakota, Dick Vincent, photographed Manipogo near the Waterhen River on August the 13th, 1962. The best picture later appeared in the Winnipeg Free Press. On this occasion, Manipogo was seen for 15 minutes by some 20 observers and was estimated to be 12 feet long. Manipogo seems to like August and was seen again that month in 1964, where it was described as green-black with duo humps, 2 humps, and about 16 feet long. August is often referred to as the dog days of summer. Perhaps they should be renamed Manipogo days. Alas, Manipogo has not been seen much in recent years. What follows is a bad poem about Manipogo by the bad poet Warren S. James. Lake Manitoba can take pride. Its waters teem with things inside. One of those things, I hope you know, goes by the name Manipogo. The great big lake is its address. It's been in Winnipeg's Free Press. I saw the front page photographs, so you can see it's not for laughs. The moral of the story: seeing a sea serpent might not be a mistake in the lake. The Great Snake of Lake Erie. The Great Lakes have their share of monsters, and a gigantic snake or fish, possibly an eel, has been reported in Lake Erie. First observed in 1817 by the crew of a schooner, it was described as dark brown or black, with a length of 40 feet. In 1892, it attracted the attention of those aboard the Madeline by thrashing about on the surface of the lake, as if in combat with something under the water. A newspaper report of the sighting claimed the dark brown snake was 50 feet long and had viciously sparkling eyes and a large head. On May 5, 1896, 4 observers at Crystal Beach, including a Captain Beecher, saw something sloshing around, which turned out to be a huge serpent with eyes the size of silver dollars. According to the St. Catherine's Daily Standard for May 11th, 1896, at times it would lie straight on the surface of the water with its whole length visible. Then it would lift its head and curl its body so that it would be visible only at intervals where the humps projected above the surface. At times, it would turn partly on its side, when it was plainly seen that the color of the lower part of its body was much lighter than the back, which was dark brown or almost black. Its head looked like a dog's head, having a similar prominence above and back of the eyes. Its tail, however, was pointed and like that of any monstrous land serpent. Captain Beecher threw stones at the creature. Hey, Beecher, creature, that rhymes. Captain Beecher threw stones at the creature, which tried to grab or swallow them, thinking them food. Luckily for the old sailor, he didn't hit it and arouse its snakish temper. In 1931, 2 Cincinnati men were supposed to have caught a serpent-like creature while in a boat off Sandusky, Ohio. They clubbed the strange animal and hauled it ashore, where they put it in a wooden box. Harold Madison, curator of the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, came to Sandusky to examine the creature and found it was an Indian python. As for the 2 men, they apparently were carny, as in carnival workers. Step right up, folks. Step right up and see the sea serpent. The great snake of Lake Erie is sometimes referred to as Bessie. Lake Erie sturgeons can grow to 7 feet in length and weigh 300 pounds. Could the behavior of such a huge fish account for sightings of Bessie? The Cleveland Monsters of the American Hockey League are named after Bessie. But remember the Cleveland Barons. Sorry, couldn't resist. What follows is a bad poem about Bessie, the great snake of Lake Erie, by the bad poet Warren S. James. Long ago, a Captain Beecher thought he saw an evil creature. He tried to throw a rock at it. Alas, it was too far to hit. The crew of the ship Madeleine don't want to see it again. Yes, they saw a big snake Eerie out on the waves of old Lake Erie. If this is your first visit to my channel, please consider subscribing. My name is Warren, and I write and tell original ghost stories and original horror stories featuring such cryptids as the Night Floaters, werewolves, and the Black-Eyed Children. And I also recite bad poetry, original bad poetry. Again, please consider subscribing. Please help me to reach my goal of 2,500 subs in 2022. Till midnight. Cheers. Music used in today's video was that earworm, Sneaky Snitch, by that patron of the internet, Kevin MacLeod. Back in 1976, not 18, I had a summer job as a deckhand on a lake freighter. It seemed like a good idea at the time. But the situation, had a few snags. Imagine working at your current job and quitting time rolls around. But you can't leave. Well, that's the situation if you work on a freighter. If you're out there in the middle of one of the Great Lakes, how are you going to go home? It made for some long evenings. Long evenings. Unless they woke you up in the middle of the night to help unload the cargo of A, grain, or B, iron ore pellets. Bottom line on a boat, you're either working your ass off or you're bored out of your mind. And the devil makes work for idle hands. Hence pranks, especially if you're new to sailing. I was a particular target as I attended university and was known as the effin' student. I shared a cabin with 2 other guys, both of them good heads. But all my shipmates delighted in practical jokes at my expense. As a result, I didn't really fall for it when they told me it was my turn to pull spark watch. Somebody has to stand watch under the funnel to make sure no sparks come out and start a fire, eh? They told me. Isn't that the watchman's job? I said. Nah, the watchman ain't got time for that. He's busy, watching, eh? What is he watching? That's the trouble with you effing students. You ask too many questions. Anyway, you got first watch. We'll relieve you at midnight. Now, there is no way a spark from a funnel could start a fire aboard ship. For starters, they don't throw sparks. And if by some odd chance a spark did fall, it would simply go out. The ship was made of steel, not wood. Still, I had no choice but to go along with the gag and hope that my shipmates wouldn't make me wait too long before coming to laugh at me. In order to make the best of it, I stopped at the galley first to grab some snacks. Believe it or not, they had fairly healthy snacks, and so I filled my pockets with cookies and grabbed a couple of apples and went out to pull Spark Watch. I sat down on the deck, which was still fairly warm from the afternoon sun, and rested my back against the funnel. I hoped I'd have time to eat all my snacks before they came to razz me. Now, I was always pretty tired working on that ship, so it wasn't long before I was sound asleep, only to wake up with a start. It was midnight, and I wasn't alone. A man stood over me. A man stood over me in what appeared to be an old brick-red British Army uniform. He was wearing a tall black bicorn hat, kind of like Napoleon's, but it was his face. His face. It was chalky white and bloodless, with dark burning eyes, but without a jaw. He had no jaw, just a dark gaping maw which drooled saliva as he made an awful mewing sound. I think it was trying to talk to me, but I didn't want to talk to it. I screamed and ran, and I was halfway across the deck when I ran into Tom, the slow-moving and slow-talking ship's watchman. "Steady on, bye," he told me. Tom, we gotta get out of here. There's this thing." "Well, I don't see anything, bye." And in truth, the awful thing seemed to have vanished. I told him what I saw. "Ah, lady lips," was all he said before escorting me back to my cabin, where I spent a sleepless night. In the morning, and they had us up by 7 a.m., I was half dead and dragging my ass. At breakfast, and all day, I noticed the other guys whispering and staring towards me, until I was finally fed up enough to ask Darwin, one of the guys I shared the cabin with, just what was going on. "They're saying you saw lady lips," he said, as if I would know what he was talking about. After some expostulating, I finally learned the backstory. Lady Lips, despite the unusual name, if that was his real name, if it didn't get garbled by history, it seems Lady Lips was actually a British officer during the War of 1812. During a naval action on Lake Erie. Lake Erie, the very lake we were sailing across, Lady Lips had the misfortune of being hit in the face by a cannonball which tore his jaw off. He bled to death, which may have been a mercy. Imagine going through life looking like that. It was bad enough he was going through the afterlife looking like that. Ever since then, he's been known to haunt the lakes, Donovan said, usually scaring the crap out of newbies. Like you. Well, scare the crap out of me he did, I said with some emotion. It's just like an effing student to act like that, Donovan said. I don't know why you got so scared. The poor guy's probably lonely. I bet all he wanted to do was jaw with you. The moral of the story? Lady Lips scared me, but I still like to jaw about it. I guess you could say my experiences on watch sparked my interest in ghosts. But about Lady Lips, I'm no longer interested. If this is your first visit to my channel, please consider subscribing. My name is Warren, and I write and tell original ghost stories and original horror stories featuring such cryptids as the night floaters, werewolves, and the black-eyed children. So again, please consider subscribing. Please help me to reach my goal of 2,500 subs in 2022. As well, I've started a channel covering the events of the War of 1812. There's a link to it in the description. Why not check it out and consider subscribing. Till midnight, cheers! Pictures used in today's video, courtesy of Pix here, that's PX here, while the music was the classic Lightless Dawn by that patron of the internet, Kevin MacLeod.